11 spine-chilling 7-Eleven tales exposed. Terrifying horrors you must discover tonight. Jenna wiped the counter, her hands trembling from exhaustion. The fluorescent lights buzzed over her like a swarm of angry bees, each second stretching painfully as she tallied the cash register for the night. Another long shift at the 7-Eleven in this sleepy Ohio suburb, where shadows danced just beyond the rows of snacks once a safe haven, now a looming prison of bills and responsibilities that chained her to the ground. But tonight felt different, ominous. A figure caught her eye by the slushy machine, draped in worn black jeans and a leather jacket that seemed too heavy for the air around him. He lingered, casting out glances her way, his presence sending unshakable chills down her spine. The corners of the store grew darker, distorting the once cheerful colors of the candy and drinks. Was it just her tired mind playing tricks? She forced herself to focus on the customers shuffling through the door, masking her growing unease beneath a fake smile. But the tension in the air twisted tighter with each beep of the scanner, as the man's eyes bore into her like a predator sizing up its prey. But then came the strange noises, shelves creaked ominously, and whispers crawled through the aisles as if the store was alive with dark secrets. Jenna's heart raced, fueled by panic. She was alone in the store after midnight, a single mother with 2 kids waiting at home for her to return. That familiar anxiety followed her, pressing down on her chest like a weight she couldn't shake off. Just breathe, she thought. This is America. It's all perfectly normal here, right? The next evening, as she toyed nervously with the register buttons, the eerie man returned, now inches away, a creeping shadow. Staring past her at the snacks lined up on the shelves, his thirst for something darker hung thick in the air. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she answered it almost instinctively. It was her kids' voices trembling on the line, describing strange noises at home, scuffling, whispers that danced just out of comprehension. Panic flooded her. She could sense something sinister lurking in the shadows behind each grain of their fear. No, don't let it be real. But she flicked her eyes back at him. He had moved closer. The strange man loomed behind her, a grotesque figure now practically breathing down her neck. With quaking hands, she fumbled for her keys, deciding to close the store early. But the moment she reached for them, horror froze her in place. The security cameras flickered ominously all black, static filling the screens as if some malevolent force had snuffed them out. A chill coursed through her veins. What is happening? Her life felt like a fragile bubble ready to burst. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The lights flickered again, plunging the store into darkness. Panic gripped her. Her breath caught in her throat as she fumbled for her phone. The chilling sound of rustling in the aisles echoed around her, punctuated by a sinister chuckle that crawled right under her skin. You can't escape, Jenna, the man's voice taunted, wrapping around her heart like a deadly vine. The dread surged around her as the whispers intensified, deepening the oppressive atmosphere, as time blurred into a question of survival. Would she be able to protect her children from the horror inching closer? The door felt miles away, and Jenna's heart raced as she prepared to face the unimaginable. The oppressive darkness swallowed her whole as Jenna's heart thundered in her chest, each beat drumming a frantic rhythm of fear. She clutched her phone like a lifeline, its faint light flickering as she raised it before her, illuminating just enough to catch a glimpse of the aisle ahead. The sinister chuckle echoed again, sending jagged shards of dread slicing through her resolve. What do you want? She shouted, desperation lacing her voice, half hoping for clarity, half terrified of the answer. You know, don't you? His voice danced around her, shifting like smoke. He stepped closer, the blade of his breath slicing the air. Everything you store here, it's all mine. Jenna staggered back, the cold tiles beneath her feet sticky with fear. The shelves breathed heavily, lined with candy bars that now felt like tombstones. She had to escape. Her kids, what was happening to them? They needed her. "Don't be scared," he whispered, his tone mockingly soothing. "It's not you I want, yet." She felt the words sink deep, twisting in her stomach like a dark omen. The store creaked, the slushy machine hummed unnaturally, and all the while, his eyes glinted wickedly in the half-light. With shaky breaths she turned toward the front door, praying it was still unlocked. Sudden movement dashed her hopes. A figure stepped into her peripheral, blocking her exit. A second man, just as cloaked in darkness, emerged from the shadows, his face obscured but his malice palpable. Jenna's stomach dropped as she realized the clutches of this nightmare tightened around her. "Two for the price of one," the newcomer grinned, revealing a mouth too wide, too sharp, a predator's toothy smile. A chill dripped down her spine. She couldn't let these monsters trap her here. Fighting the immobilizing fear, Jenna gripped her phone tighter and pivoted to run down the nearest aisle. The fluorescent lights flickered erratically. Beneath the buzzing sound, she thought she heard murmurs, twinkling fragments of laughter that felt ancient and sinister. It was like the store itself was laughing at her helplessness. Jenna launched herself toward the back door, desperate for freedom, certain that this was nothing short of a horror movie. As she dashed around the display of chips, she felt a whisper slip by her ear, faint yet chilling. "Come play with us." It twirled around her, drawing her attention back to the slights and souvenirs on the shelves. The mocking laughter crescendoed, a cacophony of voices blending into one maddened symphony of chaos. Then she seized a broom, wielding it like a sword, a pitiful weapon, but it was all she had. Jenna turned to face her pursuers, heart in her throat. The darkness pressed against her, thick and heavy, but adrenaline surged through her veins. "What do you want?" she screamed, her voice echoing off the shelving units. "To watch you break," the first man replied, stepping into the light, shadows falling apart from his features. The malevolence in his eyes glowed vividly against the dimness. Suddenly, the door behind her burst open. A rush of icy wind swept through the store, extinguishing the fluorescent lights entirely, throwing them all into pitch blackness. Panic surged anew, threatening to consume her. Jenna swung the broom in every direction but couldn't see who was around her. She felt the oppressive presence drawing closer, the sinister whispers morphing into commands. "Join us, do it, give in!" With no choice, she lunged toward the echoing door, breathless and terrified, only to collide against something solid. A scream erupted from her throat, but it was ruthlessly cut short as her escape evaporated. The suffocating claustrophobia of the darkened 7-Eleven pressed in on her. Just as the shadows began to encircle her, she glimpsed a pair of glowing eyes piercing through the void. They were watching. Waiting. The flickering lights blinked back into existence just as Jenna collided violently with the ground. The man in leather stepped forward, and the door slammed shut behind her. What happens when ignorance collides with fear? He smiled, moving dangerously close. Time itself felt like it had warped, crushing the room into silence. Jenna's mind raced with images of her children, screaming for help, warning her of impending doom. With her heart pounding, she realized she was trapped in a never-ending nightmare. "What's going on?" she shouted, forcing her voice to break through the darkness as terror rumbled in response. And then, in a chilling whisper, he leaned in close. "You'll find out soon enough." The silence after his words hung thick, almost suffocating. Jenna's breath came in shallow gasps as she struggled to process the implications. The shadows were alive, swirling around her in a mischievous dance of malice, darting closer and then retreating. Each flicker of the lights provided only brief solace, the familiar sight of the store morphing into something grotesque, a carnival of horrors curated just for her. She thrust the broom forward, fighting against the encroaching figures that moved with an unsettling fluidity. They twisted in and out of focus, their features never fully revealing themselves, yet she could feel their laughter in the marrow of her bones, deep and dark. Jenna's eyes darted around as she searched for any semblance of escape in this hellish nightmare. "Why me?" she exclaimed, her voice cracking. "Why are you doing this?" The man in leather stepped forward, his smile unfurling like a snake's. "You're not special, Jenna. You're just convenient." "A drop in the bucket," he said, his tone dismissive, almost bored. "You have what we want." Jenna felt a pulse of dread wash over her. What could they possibly want from her? She sensed that truth lay somewhere within the shadows, tangled with questions she couldn't afford to think about. Panic clawed at her mind as memories of her children bubbled to the surface. She couldn't allow her sadness to derail her fight for survival. With newfound resolve, Jenna turned to the door, intending to muscle her way through whatever obstacle lay between her and freedom. But just as she moved, a low growl emanated from the darker corner of the store, amplifying her terror. The other figure, the one who had been silent until now, slithered into the flickering light, revealing eyes that were nothing short of predatory. "Don't you want to play?" he hissed, his voice carved from gravel, each word dripping with cruel intent. "Play?" she snapped, her defiance surprising even herself. "This isn't a game." "Isn't it?" the man in leather replied, circling her, embodying the essence of predation. The shelves seemed to close in as Jenna felt the weight of the two of them pressing onto her. An unnatural laughter echoed in her ears. Something deeper than malevolence churned in the shadows. It was almost as if the store itself was alive, reveling in her fear. She swung the broom wildly as they closed in, desperation fueling her movements. One solid swing connected, but it was like striking a brick wall. The man merely flinched and gave a dark chuckle that seemed to vibrate through her bones. "I am the keeper of secrets, Jenna. And you're already trapped in my web," he taunted. "The longer you stay, the more you become one with the other lost souls." Jenna's heart raced as she grasped the implications of his words. She had heard stories of strange happenings in 7-Eleven's, people disappearing, shadows lingering long after the sun set. But to be in one of those stories herself? Ignoring the icy fingers of fear wrapping around her, she pushed through the chaos and dashed for the chips display, hoping to find a way to navigate through the shifting shadows. As she peered over the edge, she saw something glimmer, a key, sagging between the bags. It was almost mocking her, just out of reach. "Desperate moves can lead to desperate ends," the man in leather warned, a smug smile plastered on his face. Jenna reached for the key, lips pressed tightly together, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon her. They seemed to relish in her every move, every hesitation bringing her closer to despair. With a surge of panic, she grabbed the key and leaped back, breathing heavily. "What are you?" she gasped, the question clawing its way out of her throat. "I am the whisper in the dark. I am the fear that never leaves." "And you, Jenna, are my favorite story," he replied, shifting closer, his proximity suffocating. A sudden thought struck her. Maybe the stories could be rewritten. Maybe she could sever the strings they had woven around her. With one final defiant push, Jenna gripped the key tightly and shouted against the cacophony she was surrounded by, "This ends now. I'll find a way out." The store shook as if in response, the shadows shifting angrily. And in that very moment, the flickering lights went out one last time, plunging Jenna back into a blanket of darkness, with the chilling laughter echoing all around her. The sensation of icy fingers grazed her arm. "We're just getting started," a voice slithered through the void, leaving her clinging to the promise of a fight she couldn't afford to lose. But what other horrors awaited in the suffocating silence? Jenna's heart raced as darkness enveloped her. She could hear nothing but her own frantic breathing and the eerie echoes of laughter that twisted through the aisles, curling around her like smoke. The key felt hot against her palm, a tiny bit of hope in the maelstrom of terror. "Now where will you run?" the man in leather rasped, his voice slicing through the silence like a jagged knife. With every fiber of her being, Jenna pushed herself forward, her instincts screaming at her to escape. She stumbled into a shelf, knocking over a stack of cans that clattered to the floor like an alarm. The noise seemed to provoke a response. The shadows hissed, twisting and writhing in fury. "Stop!" she shouted, desperation lending strength to her voice. "You can't do this." "Oh, but we can," the growling figure taunted, emerging from the chaos. "It's what we live for. Your fear turns the mundane into something unholy. You provide the thrill." Frantic, Jenna spotted the break room door at the back of the store. The key tugged at her thoughts, and she knew she had to find the lock it belonged to. "I want to be your story." "Not today!" she yelled defiantly, her voice echoing back to her like a mocking gift. The man in leather lunged at her, too quick, too beastly. Jenna ducked just in time, the brush of his fingers grazing her hair, sending icy chills racing down her spine. She didn't look back, sprinting towards the door, not daring to grasp what she might find on the other side. The door banged open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with old, sagging chairs and a flickering fluorescent light. The air was heavy with stale coffee and rot. She hesitated only briefly, taking a moment to inhale a burning desperation before sprinting inside, ready to barricade herself. But as she entered, her eyes fell upon the wall covered with dusty photos. Each one was of a customer, a familiar face looming from the shadows. Beneath each image was a name, but the last names were crossed out, replaced with crude markings. Jenna's heart sank as she realized they were names of the missing. Her breath snagged in her throat as she recognized one, a friend of hers, a woman who had vanished just last year. "Look at them, Jenna. Your fellow guests," the low voice whispered from nowhere and everywhere, wrapping around her like a serpent. "What brings you to our party?" In an act of madness and bravery, she reached for the key again, feeling its weight as she followed the line of photos to a locked filing cabinet. Hope shimmered within her like an anxious spark. Perhaps there were secrets hidden in there, something that could unravel the nightmare. In one swift motion, she inserted the key into the lock, her heart pounding, the sound of the shadows creeping ever nearer. With a click, the cabinet door swung open, and in that moment, time seemed to freeze. Inside, there were files reeked of mildew and despair, but what caught her eye was a journal, its cover cracked and worn. Scrawled across the first pages were tales of previous victims' names, dates, terrifying descriptions of what awaited people like her. "Did you really think this was about escape?" The man in leather's voice echoed, thick with amusement. "You're already a part of our story." Suddenly, every photograph on the wall began to pucker and bulge, a grotesque sight, as if the faces within would spill out of their frames. Jenna staggered back, a wave of nausea crashing over her. The shadows shifted restlessly, as if they thrived on her fear. "Time is running out, Jenna," the gravelly voice taunted. "Choose to join them or become the story we've been waiting for." With a terrible realization dawning upon her, Jenna slammed the journal shut, and with a newfound determination, she screamed, "I'm not a character in your sick tale." The moment she shouted, a blinding surge of energy coursed through the air. It pushed back the shadows for a heartbeat, scattering them like broken glass, and gave her a glimpse of the door. But was it an exit or an entrance to further darkness? As the shadows recoiled, she had to decide fast. In the distance, music began to play, a haunting tune that seeped into her mind. Beneath it lay a palpable dread, one that swelled and thundered like a heartbeat, threatening to pull her in. But where would she go from here? The choice was hers, and time was slipping away. Would she have the courage to break free, or was she destined to become part of their twisted narrative forever? Jenna's breath came in jagged gasps as the music wrapped around her, an echoing lament that pulsed with her racing heart. The shadows stuttered, flickering against the walls like distressed moths, but their retreat felt ominous rather than liberating. "Don't listen to it, Jenna," she whispered urgently to herself. The grasp of terror threatened to swallow her whole. She could almost hear the laughter of the man in leather, a cruel melody dancing in her mind, mocking her every thought. What if she ran? But where? The break room door loomed behind her, an unsettling threshold between the known horror of the party and the unknown horrors that might lie outside. If she left now, would the shadows pursue her? The thought made her stomach churn. With grim determination, she backed towards the flickering light where the journal still lay. It felt like a lifeline, its pages holding secrets that could shed light on her tormentors. Would the truth within it set her free or drag her deeper into their sinister game? As she crouched, fingers trembling on the journal, a shudder ran through the room. The temperature dropped, and the air thickened with an acrid smell, something decaying and wrong. Jenna fought the urge to gag. she had to focus. The music crescendoed, now eerily filling the emptiness as it beckoned her deeper into despair. The shadows responded to the rhythm, swirling more aggressively. Their dance was a grotesque mockery of joy and horror. They flitted closer, tendrils reaching out as if to pull her into their darkness. Jenna clenched her teeth, pushing the terrified whispers to the back of her mind. She tore open the journal with frantic energy. The pages were filled with scrawled accounts of nightmares, victims pleading not to be part of any story, their lives reduced to chilling tales that echoed through time. Each account seemed a warning but also a tantalizing puzzle. This was about more than survival. It was about understanding what haunted her. As she flipped through the pages, one line froze her fingers mid-flip. Once you've seen the truth, the choice is no longer yours. Cold fear kissed her skin like the touch of ice. What truth? What choice? Just then, the music shifted to an ominous tone. The man in leather's voice returned, low and seductive. Look deeper, Jenna. Understand their fate, and join the story. It's the only way to survive. Sickening dread washed over her, enveloping her in despair. The shadows shivered at her back, whispering promises of liberation in exchange for surrender. She could feel their excitement, the palpable hunger for her fear, but she wanted no part of their twisted celebration. Jenna's mind raced. There had to be a way. She could not fathom joining their league of victims. There had to be power in knowing the truth, in deciphering the pages before her. Stubbornly, she dug her nails into the paper. But before she could gather meaning from the chaos, a blinding light burst forth from the cabinet, a searing white that filled the room with a warm glow, blinding Jenna momentarily. She squeezed her eyes shut against the brightness that pushed through the suffocating shadows. Accept the truth, or be consumed by the darkness forever. The voice roared, echoing off the walls. The shadows writhed, quaking in agitation, desperate for a taste of her fear. Suddenly, shadows swarmed the light, darkening it to a flickering ember. Jenna's heart thumped violently against her ribcage. The journal felt heavy in her hands, a weight of consequences rising like bile in her throat. Was this light salvation or a trap? Time tangled around her, slithering like a snake. With a sudden spark of clarity, Jenna made her decision. She would intensify the glow or plunge into the blackest depths. The shadows danced hungrily at her feet, but she would not give in. As she straightened, the music crescendoed a beastly clamor that promised freedom or doom. Jenna took a step toward the light, ready to harness it, ready to unleash whatever fury would come next. But just as her foot crossed into brilliance, the laughter returned, louder, more manic, twisting her resolve with fear. What awaits you is beyond comprehension. In that moment, Jenna understood the darkness was not merely waiting, it was hungry for her choice. Would she forge through the light, or would she be claimed, becoming yet another haunting in their relentless story? The crescendo that filled her ears was not just a warning. It was a countdown. She had moments left. What awaited her decision was a fate yet to be written. The music surged, a monstrous tidal wave crashing against her sanity. Jenna's heart pounded, each beat resonating with the chaos surrounding her. It was now or never. The shadows writhed, aching for her reluctance, tightening their grip around her. They waited, battened down and glistening, like predators poised to strike. In that implosive moment, she launched herself into the blinding light. The incandescent burst consumed her, seeping into her skin, but as she plunged, the warmth felt disorienting, almost deceiving. She stood alone, swept away from the grotesque shadows, but the air hummed with an electric tension. The light was both liberating and isolating, wrapping her in a cocoon of false safety. Jenna squinted against the brightness, but her euphoria quickly faded when she noticed shadows, lurking at the edges, waiting for a weakness. Choose. The voice moaned, seductive yet filled with hostility. Join us, or perish. Thick gnawing dread clawed through her. What had she stepped into? There was no turning back now. She had left the room and the suffocating hold of the past behind her, but the weight of the choice still bore down. She could feel a pulse thrumming beneath her feet, like a forgotten heart longing to be awakened. Beneath this borrowed light, Jenna's eyes scanned her surroundings. She saw a twisted version of the break room. Frayed textures clung to the walls, old photographs hung at unsettling angles, their subjects bearing expressions that screamed silent horrors. Every detail was magnified, alabaster and pitch coalescing in a dance of fear. But the journal, she needed the journal. The power to comprehend the looming threat lay within its pages. She turned, but her heart sank as she discovered it was nowhere to be found. Panic rose like bile in her throat. No, no! Without warning, a deep chuckle rolled through the room, reverberating off the walls like laughter in a crowded theater. It felt familiar, sickeningly so. The shadows crept nearer, whispering together, but their words twisted in incomprehensible secrets. She clamped her hands to her ears, trying to drown them out, fighting against an onslaught of insanity. Suddenly, a figure materialized from the haze, emerging from the shadowy fringes. The man in leather, his smile cruel, beckoned toward her. You ran from the dance, but the story has only just begun. Get away from me! Jenna shrieked, rage and fear suffusing her words. The choice, my dear Jenna, he purred, stepping closer, is not only yours anymore. In an instant, the shadows coalesced, swirling into a vortex of ominous energy, and a shriek, the agonized pleas of those who had come before, filled the air. The chaos intensified, suffocating Jenna, pushing every rational thought from her mind. She lunged toward the door she thought still existed behind her, but it dissolved into blackness. Struggling against the inevitability, she whirled back toward the man, who now loomed with unearthly intensity. Fate is writing itself around you, with every heartbeat. You can't escape it. But Jenna's instincts flared. She was not just a victim. Each heartbeat was a challenge, a defiance against this hell. Then I'll write my own fate, she shouted, voice trembling but fierce. Fists clenched, she raced toward the man in leather, rage a bright flame in her gut. As she approached, shadows reached for her, desperate to pull her away. But she pushed through the chaos, digging deep within her. She felt a flicker of resistance. The blinding light wrapped around her fists, becoming a weapon against the consuming darkness. Stand back! She roared, the light bursting in a wild explosion, blinding everything around her. In that instant, the man's laughter turned to a snarl. Fighting doesn't mean you win, little girl. As the shadows retreated, the weight of the journal came rushing back to her mind. If she could summon the truth from it, perhaps she could rewrite the end of her story. But in that moment of hope, Jenna realized something more terrifying was clawing its way to the surface. This wasn't just about her choice. It was about the choices that haunted everyone trapped in this macabre carousel. With the shadows receding, she took a deep breath, resolving not to fear the choice ahead but to demand the power it held. Every second felt critical. Would she find the journal? Would the truth liberate or ensnare her in this dark pageantry? Her heart raced as the shadows appeared to withdraw, only to whisper her name with haunting urgency, chilling her blood. Choose again, Jenna, it will never be over. Jenna's heart thudded violently in her chest as the echoes of her name slithered through the air, the shadows conspiring like predators in the dark. They were no longer mere silhouettes but cacophonous whispers twisted into a tangible terror. Choose again, Jenna, they hissed, and she felt their fingers brush her skin. It was ice cold, giving her a jolt so sharp she staggered back, breathing hard. What do you want from me? She shouted into the vortex, resolve slipping. Everything, the man in leather replied, his voice dripping with mockery. You think you can rewrite your fate? You're still playing by our rules. Suddenly, the blinding light flickered like a dying star, revealing broken remnants of the break room cereal boxes spilling their contents. Chairs toppled as if a storm had swept through. The comforting familiarity of the space only highlighted the grotesqueness of its transformation. Your friends, the man in leather continued, stepping closer, shadows swirling like a whirlwind at his feet. They are trapped, just like you. Each choice they made weighs on them, each regret a chain binding them to this place. Images of her friends burst to life in her mind, laughing faces, silly jokes, moments stolen from time. But now their grins morphed into frozen masks of despair. Panic clawed at her throat. No, I have to save them. Only if you dare to enter the chaos, the man taunted. Jenna felt flares of heat rising to her cheeks, a powerful fury igniting within her. She would not stand idle, not when the very essence of her friends tethered them to this relentless nightmare. "Show me!" she yelled. "I'll take whatever I must to break their chains." The shadows swirled violently, and the atmosphere thickened with a new energy, heavy and foreboding. The room began to warp, walls contracting, stretching like a grotesque puppet show. Jenna's feet sank into the floor, sticky and alive, as if it fed off her fear. Amid the chaos, shapes began to form. Her friends' faces appeared, each frozen in expressions of torment. "Help us, Jenna!" they cried in dissonant harmony, their eyes wide with terror. "We're trapped here." "No, no!" She shook her head, urging the illusions to fall away, but their faces drew closer, mouths twisting into silent screams. "Exactly as I told you," sneered the man in leather. "Fear is what binds them. It's what binds all of us." Desperation surged, and Jenna felt the pulse beneath her feet throb harder. She closed her eyes, recalling the power inside her, that flicker of defiance that had pierced through the dark before. She would not lose them. "Together!" she shouted, fists raised, channeling all her rage and fear. "We'll break free!" With a deep breath, Jenna reached deep into herself, drawing forth the glow that pulsed with every heartbeat, bringing it forth like a radiant shield. As the shadows lunged, she unleashed it. The brilliance surged forth, illuminating every crevice, chasing darkness into the corners. The shadows shrieked, but the echoes of her friends' pleas grew louder, rising like a crescendo. "You think this will save you?" the man roared, stepping back. "This isn't just about you. It's about enough," Jenna cried. With all her might, she hurled the light toward them, a comet slicing through the gloom. As the shadows recoiled, the blinding light enveloped her friends. They began to take shape, their stricken faces morphing into expressions of confusion that swiftly shifted to fierce determination. They were waking up. But then, with a shocking whiplash that sent Jenna crashing down into an abyss, everything froze. The man in leather stood above her, a gaping maw of shadowy horror threatening to swallow her whole. "Is this the path you truly want? Or will you choose to let them fall once more?" His grin twisted impossibly wide, teeth gleaming like knives in the darkness. A deafening silence grew thick, compressing with the weight of choices hanging in the air. Jenna's stomach knotted painfully. How many lives would be lost? How much horror was she truly willing to face? "Choose, Jenna," the shadows hissed again, "or remain forever lost in the dark." Each second pulsed. She could feel the weight of every soul, every secret desire, every flickering hope. The darkness waited, eager and patient, like a spider poised over a trembling fly. But was it merely a game? Or a desperate plea for salvation? The chamber began to spiral as Jenna struggled to find her footing, dread coiling tightly around her heart. Her next move could save her friends or lead them to ruin. Choose. Jenna's hands felt clammy as she gripped the edge of the abyss, looking into the void of nothingness that loomed menacingly beneath her. The darkness pulsated, like a living creature breathing in the air, sucking away the hope and encouragement she hoped would keep her continued belief afloat. Still, the cries of her friends echoed endlessly as if they were reaching out from the depths. "Make a choice!" the man in leather bellowed, impatience slicing through his words. Fresh waves of terror splashed over Jenna, and she felt each drop settle into her bones like frost. "What does that even mean?" she shouted back, desperation igniting a fire in her chest. "What kind of choice is this?" "The choice between your safety and theirs," he replied, stepping forward, shadows swirling ominously like a storm at his heels. "You can escape this madness, or you can save them. But one path leads to ruin." Her heart hammered in her chest, fear battling with the determination to fight for her friends. Jenna could feel a sickening weight twist in her gut. The words of the man in leather dripped with menace, and she knew that no matter what she chose, something horrific would be the consequence. But could she really condemn her friends to the same fate that gripped her own heart? "Which one will you cherish, Jenna?" The voice twisted into a chilling whisper, wrapping tightly around her, echoing back through the shadows. All heroes must face loss. Are you willing to sacrifice them? Just to save yourself? Shut up! She screamed, pressing both hands against her ears as if that would drown him out. But the whispers grew louder, drowning her thoughts. Images flashed before her, her friends laughing together on a couch, tossing popcorn during a movie night, all while the unseen shadows lurked just outside their door. A scream tore through her mind, and she staggered as if struck. Images of her friends John, Clara, and Nate flashed, their smiles fading and transforming into those frozen masks of despair. Every heartbeat felt heavy as if she could feel the chains of regret wrapping around them, binding them tighter. Choose, Jenna. The whispers continued to weave through the chaos, snaking deep into her very core. Join them. Or betray them. With frantic energy, she turned from the void and glared at the man, now features rising sharper from the shadows. I'll never abandon them. The man in leather laughed, a hollow sound that echoed deeper than the shadows themselves. Oh, my dear, that's exactly what you must decide. As he spoke, the ground beneath her feet trembled, fissures breaking apart around her. Voices split, merging into an agonizing cacophony of sorrow and dread. Who would she be? A coward? A savior? Each moment stretched like a rubber band on the brink of snapping. With every ounce of strength left in her, Jenna tightened her fists and raised her chin defiantly. If I could save them, I would fight the dark until my last breath. As soon as she spoke, the shadows writhed, drawn by her ferocity. The man's eyes lit with a sinister gleam, baring enraged teeth like polluting shards. Then brace yourself, Jenna. For if you stand against the darkness will stand against you, tenfold. She could feel the air grow tangible, wrapped in malevolence and sorrow. Then, from the corner of her eye, sunlight flickered, a frail glimmer through the layers of despair. It beckoned her a lighthouse amidst the storm. But the shadows were closing in, like ravenous wolves circling prey. I can't let them be lost, Jenna whispered to herself, realization igniting a spark deep within. Prepare for the reckoning, the man in leather warned, darkness practically vibrating with anticipation. Jenna's breath quickened. Could she confront the depths of despair she could sense suffocating her friends? Was he simply a puppet master, spinning the web? Time seemed to slow. One choice remained. Would she leap into the unknown, challenge the anger, and emerge as their savior? Choose! They howled, and the room spun with tumult. The powers were shifting. Jenna knew what she had to do. But as she stepped toward the light, she felt a sudden cold grip around her ankle, dragging her back into the seething darkness. What terrifying truth lay at the heart of this struggle, waiting to be uncovered? Jenna gasped as the icy grip tightened, pulling her under like a stone sinking into a well. Panic clawed at her throat. The darkness around her twisted, enveloping her like a shroud, suffocating any last remnants of hope. She struggled, mind racing with images of her friends' faces etched in worry, their laughter now echoes mocking her resolve. Let go! She cried, kicking against the weight that dragged her deeper. But the more she fought, the more the shadows tightened their hold, a twisted game where every ounce of effort only ensnared her further. She could barely breathe, the air thick and heavy, stinging her lungs. Do you feel it? The man's voice slithered into her thoughts, cold and taunting. The choice is slipping away. With a final surge of desperation, Jenna whipped her head around, searching for any sign of her friends. In the inky void, she caught a flicker of their faces, distorted and waning, as if microseconds from disappearing altogether. The realization hit her like a lightning bolt. She could lose them for good. John! Clara! Nate! She screamed their names, heart pounding wildly. But the shadows grew louder, drowning out her voice in a tormenting symphony, a cacophony of wails that beckoned her to give in, to succumb to despair. And then, she saw a flash of light, bright and unwavering. The sunlight she had glimpsed before burned through the darkness, illuminating a path forward. Jenna's heart surged. The light shimmered with promise, a beacon of hope against the swirling void. Your choice. The man bellowed again, his figure melding into the blackness, his voice echoing as if he were the darkness itself. Embrace your fate or fight for theirs. Jenna felt the layers of dread pressing in, fear snaking around her heart like a vice. But the light pulsed rhythmically, urging her to move. Summoning every ounce of strength, she yanked her foot free from the icy grip and sprinted toward the light, every shadow snapping at her heels. As she reached the edge of the sunlight, a gust of warmth washed over her. For a fleeting second, the feel of hope wrapped around her, but then chaos erupted around her. The shadows struck back, angered by her defiance. Searing pain pierced her arm as they lashed out, the darkness roiling in fury. Jenna stumbled, and a shriek erupted from her lips as their cold fingers clawed at her skin. But she pushed through, teeth gritted as she fell forward into the embracing sun, leaving the torment behind. For a moment, everything went silent. Jenna lay on the ground, gasping, warmth flooding her senses. The sun felt like liquid gold, soothing her frayed nerves, but the relief was short-lived. She opened her eyes and saw her friends. But they were distorted, their faces frozen in fear, mouths moving in silent screams. Shivers raced up her spine as she realized they weren't alone. Shapes hovered around them, specters that hungered for despair. Jenna's heart sank. "Run!" she screamed, lunging toward them, desperate to pull them from whatever nightmare held sway. But when she reached out, they remained just out of grasp, trapped in a glass-like barrier of darkness that shimmered threateningly. Jenna Clara's voice trembled, her eyes wide with terror. "Help us! I'm here! Please!" Jenna's frantic pleas echoed around them, her pulse thundering in her ears. The shadows lurked in the edges, waiting, watching. She could already feel their eyes on her, enjoying her heart-wrenching despair. As she reached for them again, the man in leather materialized next to her, smirking with unholy glee. Such a tragic scene. They're so close and yet so far. Choosing to save them will only deepen your suffering. Jenna's stomach twisted. The monstrous truth clawed at her, the stakes higher than she could fathom. Could she truly be the savior she desperately wanted to be? What if the price was too steep? Will you step into darkness to bring them back into the light, or will you lose them forever? The walls of reality began closing in, shadows whispering their bitter secrets. Panic flooded every corner of her mind as she prepared for what was to come. The reckoning loomed closer, thrumming in the air, as Jenna made her choice, knowing that this time it could seal their fates forever. But with the darkness creeping ever nearer, what had she unleashed, and how far would she really go to save them? The shadows trembled, hungry and expectant. In that moment of decision, what if she couldn't return? Jenna's breath hitched as she stood on the precipice of despair, teetering between the light that represented hope and the oppressive shadows that whispered insidious promises. The faces of her friends, marred by fear, drove her to make a choice she could no longer avoid. She could fight for them or surrender to the terror enveloping her. "You don't have to do this!" she shouted, her voice cracking under the weight of her resolve. But the taunting laughter of the man in leather echoed in her ears, vibrating through her bones. "You believe in the illusion of choice, but either way, darkness awaits." Forcing herself to focus, Jenna locked her eyes on Clara, John, and Nate. They were still trapped within a smothering veil of shadows, flickering like mirages in a dream. Every ounce of her being screamed to protect them. "I won't leave you!" Jenna yelled, determination blazing inside her chest. With fierce resolve, she surged toward the brightness, willing herself to breach the barrier that separated them. The shadows roared, recoiling as if her fearlessness had struck them like a whip. But just as Jenna felt the warmth of the light reach her fingertips, the darkness retaliated ferociously. "No! You can't evade the truth, Jenna. You are already lost," the man in leather bellowed, his voice rising above the cacophony of shadows swirling around her. They twisted, growing denser, wrapping around her limbs like tentacles, dragging her back into despair. "No!" With every ounce of strength fueled by the love for her friends, Jenna pushed against the black tendrils coiling around her, her heart thrumming with purpose. "You belong in the light!" The shadows screamed, furious and desperate as Jenna's resolve crackled in the air. She focused on the faces of her friends, channeling her essence like a radiant sword against the storm. She gave one final shove, breaking through the dark barrier. And oh! The man in leather shrieked as Jenna broke into the radiant light, feeling it wash over her like a wave of cleansing fire. Suddenly, her friends materialized before her, pulling free as Jenna's light severed the dark bindings. They stumbled into each other's arms, shaking but alive. "Jenna!" Clara cried, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. "You did it!" The darkness howled in rage, thrashing against the luminous barrier emanating from Jenna, but she stood resolute. "You can't take us!" she stood defiantly. But the man in leather was not done yet. "You think this is it? Your battle has just begun." As the shadows surged, they began to melt around him, collecting into a swirling vortex, threatening to reignite the chaos. "Remember," his voice echoed ominously, "the darkness never truly disappears." Jenna's heart sank as she felt the truth knifing through her, but she tightened her grip around her friends. "We can face it together. We'll rewrite our story," she vowed. With that, Jenna raised her hands again, drawing deep from within herself, the warmth of their bonds blazing forth. Together, they formed a unified front, sending a wave of blinding light crashing against the approaching shadows. The moment felt electric, a complex tapestry of fear, love, and resilience. The light surged, expanding outward, engulfing the darkness in a dazzling embrace. It spiraled and collapsed, igniting in a blaze of colors that shattered the gloom, scattering the shadows into oblivion. The man in leather howled, but his cries faded as their light claimed victory over the encroaching void. In those final moments, as the light enveloped everything, Jenna's heart lightened. Each beat resonated with the echoes of laughter and love as they stepped into the radiant promise of tomorrow. The darkness had been vanquished, but they knew its remnants could linger. They would move forward, united, forever vigilant against the shadows. "I love you guys," Jenna whispered, looking into her friends' relieved faces, feeling the warmth of their presence seeping into her soul. "Together, we can take on anything." As they walked out of the 7-Eleven, once a house of horrors, now a site of shared survival, Jenna felt a weight lift. The world pulsed around them, vibrant and alive, filled with possibilities. They would create a new narrative, no longer defined by terror, but illuminated by their courage. And 3 pairs of eyes gleamed with hope as they stepped beyond the threshold. The darkness was out there, waiting. But they had each other, and from that unity could spark a far brighter story. Now it's time for you to be part of this story. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on the next exclusive tales that will light up your nights. Smash that like button now to keep this journey alive. Seriously, hit it hard. I want to hear your thoughts, so flood the comments section with your reactions and wild theories about what just went down. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this thrilling conclusion. True fans understand the importance of supporting the channel, so let us do this together.